Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to episode 6 of the Alec Walt Show. I'm your host, Alec Walt, alongside another very special guest. And today, we're talking South Carolina Gamecock football. Obviously, happy Easter to all of you that celebrate Easter. We are in the month of April, which means we are getting closer to the NFL draft. And on today's episode, we're going to look at the South Carolina Gamecock prospects whose names you could hear on NFL draft weekend. Joining me today is Chris Phillips, the host of the Spurs Up Show. Chris, welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you joining me.
What's up, man? It's great to chat with you again. Excited to talk football. Obviously, we're in the midst of baseball season, but like I was telling you off air, it's never a bad time to talk football, especially Gamecocks football. And of course, with the NFL draft coming up, it's crazy. It's funny. I feel like with the pandemic and everything, we almost forgot to register that these sporting events are actually happening this year. Like I was talking to my buddy yesterday, and I was like, you realize it's Masters Week starting tomorrow. He's like, I had no idea. Like, started Masters Week today. So we got Masters Week. We got spring games coming up. We got baseball. Feels good to just even be talking sports again at this time of year. And I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, no problem at all. I appreciate you joining me. Well, last time we spoke, it was on JDF on the Transfer Portal podcast. It was just before you guys brought back Shane Beamer. Now, I remember when you were joining me, I said, if you had the chance to choose one head coach, who would you pick? You obviously picked Beamer. Before we move on to some of these prospects, what was your reaction when you found out Beamer was taking over the program?
I was elated. I was really happy with the decision. It was one of those things, the coaching search was really, really interesting because when it first started, the usual suspects, I guess you could say, in those names that popped up of the Hugh Freezes and the Billy Napiers, I was really just happy to see South Carolina make an out-of-the-box hire, if you will, because I just feel like Hugh Freeze is the guy everyone expected to take the job. That, to me, would have just been so, good old boy SEC hire. It would have felt just like Will Muschamp, not creative, not outside the box. And again, the more former players I talk to and people within the program and just people around Gamecock football, even fans, the word culture kept coming up and reestablishing that culture. And this is just a program that needed to inject some feel good and needed something to feel good about, needed to be optimistic and hopeful. And I think getting a guy in there Shane Beamer that had been there before, he's seen this program at its height. He was there in 2010 when they went to the SEC championship. I just think that was really important and something that this program needed. So, again, I was elated when they hired him. I thought, giving a South Carolina guy a chance. I mean, we've seen the Gamecocks give Florida grads chances and Georgia grads and all this. It's it's about time a Gamecock got his shot in Columbia. So I was obviously elated and excited. And, again, I've been really excited at this point and really pleased with the progress so far that they've made within the program. So really, really excited for Shane Beamer and what he's bringing to the program.
Well, awesome. Well, obviously, the prospects we're talking about today were not under the Shane Beamer era. They were in the last year of Will Muschamp. And one thing that we talked about, again, the last time, and I've said this over and over again, is to not sleep on Jaycee Horn. I mean, you even said before that this kid is a stud. I mean, we talked about him a bunch. For those who don't exactly know who this kid is, give us a quick breakdown about the cornerback that you're going to hear his name mentioned in the first round.
No, like you said, stud is a great way to put him. I was actually pretty hard on Jaycee Horn coming into last season because he was a guy, he's one of those people, he doesn't get thrown at a lot because he plays such lockdown coverage, extremely physical. I mean, you look at him, you look up the term cornerback in the dictionary, you're going to see a picture of a guy like Jaycee Horn, extremely physical, has good size. Obviously, he has NFL lineage. His dad was Joe Horn, by the way, if you don't know who that is, pulled out the cell phone for the Saints. We all know. So he has that NFL background, but a guy that, had 0 career interceptions coming in his junior season. And I was tough on him. We all knew he was a good player. We all knew he was an all-conference type of player, but he didn't get that national recognition and that national love because he didn't have any turnovers. He didn't have any big plays. And I even said that, that I don't know of any elite defensive backs that have 0 career interceptions after 3 seasons. So I thought it was really important for Jaycee Horn to break through and break out and get that pick and get that. He needed that type of game that Israel Mukuamu had in Athens against Georgia, where he really put himself on the map. And again, a lot of fans were saying, why is, not in a disrespectful way, but it's like, why is Izzy getting so much more national love in the preseason than Jaycee Horn? I'm like, Jaycee Horn hasn't had that game. And of course, we saw it unfold this year, the Auburn game when he went up against Seth Williams and, the rest is history. I mean, what he did, I don't know why Auburn thought it was a good idea to test him, but I'm glad they did, again, because it gave Jaycee the opportunity to show off his skills and show the type of player he is. So, again, I just look at a guy like Jaycee Horn that, I mean, what's really the weakness in his game? He's the guy, like I said, you look up in the dictionary NFL cornerback, and you see a guy like Jaycee Horn. He has the speed. He has the athleticism. He's extremely physical, which I think will play fairly well at the next level if they don't call penalties on him and throw flags. I know it's getting like ticky-tack in the NFL, but no, I think he's a guy, like you said, no doubt, going into the season, you were thinking first rounder. After that Auburn game and the way the season played out, I think no, and the way he performed at the combine, by the way, absolutely destroyed the combine. I think for sure a guy that probably top 15 picks. I know I saw him projected latest top 10 pick, the 10th overall pick to the Dallas Cowboys. And I think certainly it's either him or what's the other guy? Surtain, I believe. Yeah. Patrick Surtain. It's splitting hairs, but it's definitely between those two guys of who's the top DB in the draft. And of course, Gamecock fans will tell you it's Jaycee Horn. But yeah, no, Jaycee Horn made himself a lot of money in that Auburn game with that tape and then also at the combine. So, certainly an elite prospect. And I think he's going to have a very, very long, successful career at the next level.
Well, speaking of Surtain, how much, because he's obviously a shutdown corner, came from Alabama, a school that's had a lot of success. How much separation do you believe is between the two of them? And would you be surprised if on draft day you heard Horn's name before his?
I wouldn't be surprised. No, like I said, I really think that Jaycee Horn's pro day at South Carolina really might have given him the edge. I mean, the numbers he put up were incredible. And I mean, like I said, Jaycee's a lockdown corner as well. I mean, look at the film at South Carolina. I mean, there are a lot of times where he didn't necessarily make the interception or make the big play. But if you actually look at the all-22 film and look at Jaycee Horn at the play, the reason he didn't make the play, he is completely taking his side of the field out. He's completely eliminating his man. That's why it gave guys like Israel Mukuamu and John Dixon and R.J. Roderick and Jamie Robinson and Cam Smith, it gave those guys the opportunities to make the play because, like I said, he just completely eliminated that side of the field. And I think teams knew that when they faced South Carolina that they could not go his way. And if they did, like I said, you saw what happened to Bo Nix. He threw, I think, 3 interceptions that day, and the Gamecocks got that big upset victory. But I don't think there's a ton of separation. Again, it's a coin flip. It's going to be just come down to which, who do the scouts of that team, who do they prefer? You know what I mean? I don't think you can really go wrong picking either guy, but, of course, I'm a little biased. If it was me, I'd be going Jaycee Horn. And like I said, I think, too, with the NFL background that he has growing up around Joe Horn, obviously he has that resource of him being his father. So I think that could play into it as well, a guy that you would think should adjust to the NFL lifestyle, and I think has the right attitude going into the league where he's going to be a guy, he wants to earn everything. He doesn't want it to be given. You can hear him say that in his media availability and all that stuff when he was talking in Columbia. So, I like I said, it's splitting hairs. They're both elite players. They're both lockdown corners. But again, I think Jaycee being the first DB taken overall would not surprise me at all.
For those of you that didn't watch the pro day that we're talking about a little bit, he had a 41.5-foot vertical, 11-foot-1 broad jump, 19 reps on the bench press, and a 4.37 40-yard dash. I said it before, I'm saying it again, Jaycee Horn is a stud. This kid's going to be a baller. So team-wise, I mean, obviously, I hope he falls to 15 because, this guy likes to draft cornerbacks. We have a cornerback from South Carolina that's pretty successful. But, what type of defense, what type of coach team do you think would fit Horn very well towards that 10 to 15 range in the draft?
I mean, I think definitely a defense that wants to play man on the outside. And again, you look at the Cowboys, and that's kind of where he's been projected to go. I know they need a defensive back. But again, Jaycee Horn is, I think he's going to, and I don't know, that was the thing that confused South Carolina fans is like, why do we not play more man coverage and play this bump coverage when, all we hear about in the preseason, how we have Horn and Mukuamu and there are these elite DBs and nobody can throw on them. You're playing 10 yards off the ball and you're playing this soft cushion zone defense. I think Jaycee Horn is a guy that I think he can play any type of defense, but he's going to flourish getting up into guys' faces and being physical with them. So whatever team's going to play that type of defense, again, that's going to let their defensive backs be physical and get on an island and play one-on-one. I think Horn Island is probably going to be a thing. I think it's going to be a thing at some point in the NFL. So again, whichever team is going to let Jaycee Horn go out there and be physical and play his style and get up in people's faces, I think that's going to be a defense that he's going to flourish in because as as a big NFL guy and an NFL fan, what's interesting about the NFL draft and these college prospects, and I think any of these prospects and guys in the NFL probably tell you too, a lot of it has to do with falling into the right situation. You can be the best player ever. You can be the best prospect. You can be this, that, whatever. But if you fall into a terrible organization, which all due respects to all of them, whatever, but there's some that are better than others, obviously. And if you fall into a bad organization or with a bad coach or with a bad system or a bad scheme, it can completely derail your career versus if you fall to a team like Patrick Mahomes to the Chiefs or, Deshaun Watson or whatever. Like if you get put in the right situation with the right pieces around you, it's literally the difference between being a bust and having a Hall of Fame career. So I think for Jaycee, I think he's going to do his thing no matter what. I know it's a little bit different for defensive backs, but getting into a defense where they're going to let him be physical and get up in the faces of the receivers he's going up against, I think Jaycee Horn will flourish. And I think that's his preferred style, and I think that he's that type of player.
Yeah, I mean, prime example for the cornerback position. Everyone was in love with Jeffrey Okudah last year. That physical cover corner goes to Detroit, doesn't play well. They go through a coaching change,
right.
Not fitting the system and going through that type of stuff. Does affect a corner. Obviously, hopefully, we see Jaycee go to a team where he doesn't have to deal with that. Now, let's stick in the secondary because you mentioned Israel Mukuamu, a guy who was very hyped coming into the season. You mentioned that UGA game, which was unbelievable. If you guys don't know, he had 3 interceptions in that game. One of the best performances I've seen from a cornerback. Give us a little bit of breakdown because this guy's a huge cornerback, 6'4". I mean, I think he could play a different position in the NFL, but give us a breakdown in what you think of Mukuamu can do at the next level.
Yeah, and I will say back to that Georgia game, that 2019 game in Athens when he had 3 interceptions, that's probably the most dominant performance I've seen from a Gamecocks defensive player since Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, that it was just his day. There's no other way to put it. That was his day, and of course, he made his mark, and he probably made himself a lot of money that day alone. But, a guy was interesting. It was a mixed bag last year, just to be totally honest with you. It was a mixed bag for Israel Mukuamu, and I know he dealt with injuries, had a little bit of a groin injury, but he's a guy, I don't think he's quite as polished as Jaycee Horn is. I don't think he's quite as NFL ready, if you will. But certainly, the thing that jumps off the page with him, like you mentioned, is the size, the measurables. And of course, he was not able to run a 40 at that pro day because he still has a nagging injury. So getting healthy is going to be a big thing for him. But I think certainly a guy, when you have those type of measurables, whether he plays cornerback, whether he plays safety, whatever it might be, when you have the measurables of being 6'4", and we see so many big body receivers in the NFL, and these guys again are so physical, and they're able to make these jump balls and these big impact plays. You got to love the size and the measurables from Jaycee Horn Israel Mukuamu. Again, they just don't build defensive backs that are 6'4" like he is. I mean, it's crazy when you're watching him on the field and you're like, how in the world is this guy? How are his hips so good? How are his feet so quick to be that big? And again, that's really the thing that jumps off the page with you. But he was a little bit inconsistent. Just call it for what it is. And that secondary, obviously, struggled a bit. I know we talked about that the last time I came on, the way the defense played. I think it was, 159 combined points through a three-week stretch. And it's hard to believe that South Carolina had that type of defensive talent on that defense when you look at those numbers. But no, Israel Mukuamu is a guy, like I said, I look at him more as like a 3rd or 4th, maybe 5th rounder. But the measurables make him jump out. And again, if he can sharpen up his game, if he can refine a couple of things, I think he's another guy like Jaycee that could have a really long career in the NFL. And like I said, just those overall measurables, man, they just don't build defensive backs like that anymore. So should be a lot of fun to watch to see his career unfold.
So in 5 years, what position will he be playing?
I think probably safety. I think he's more of a safety. That big body guy can come down and help you and run in the run game as well. He's physical. He does like to hit. And do I think he, like I said, at least as of right now, do I think he's a guy that can match up one-on-one and play man like a Jaycee Horn can? Not necessarily. Like I said, just be honest, in Columbia, we saw a couple different times with busted coverages and stuff. You ask Gamecock fans, and they'll just straight up tell you. I mean, there were some blown coverages for sure. But I think playing safety, and he actually played that last season a little bit in Columbia, and I think he played that throughout his career at South Carolina, helped the safety position. So I think he'll be a safety in the league.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I think both of them have a chance to be very solid. Obviously, Jaycee is one of the more elite guys. I think Mukuamu's stocks dropped a little bit, obviously, due to the inconsistency. But those are definitely 2 names you're going to hear in the secondary. Before I move to the offense, Ernest Jones, one of the top tacklers on the team, is another name, a little undersized at 6'1", 230 for the linebacker position. But just give me a quick projection on how you think or how you think he could fit an NFL team.
Yeah, I think he's a late round pick, but I love Ernest Jones, man. He's such a lunch pail. I mean, he was the heartbeat of that defense last year. He really, really was, man. And again, I know they struggled. They struggled mightily, but he's a dude. Whatever team he gets on, I don't know what his impact will be. And it's hard to project their careers and everything and what type of success he'll have. But he will be a positive addition to no matter what organization he goes to. Just a guy, like I said, a lunch pail guy, works his tail off, loves the game of football. Every single play it seemed like for South Carolina last year, no matter where the ball was going, Ernest Jones was there to be found. I mean, a guy that led this team in tackles, I believe, the last 3 seasons, had over 100 tackles one year. I mean, he flies over the field. He loves the game of football. He's just one of those guys you like to have on your team and you like to have in your organization. He's going to play the game the right way and bring a positive attitude. And like I said, be a leader mean, he truly was, like I said, the heartbeat of the defense. So I think he's a late round guy, maybe even a free agent signing, but I think certainly he will be a great pickup whoever takes a chance on him. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I could definitely see him having an impact on special teams early in his career, even if he doesn't get a job in the rotation for a linebacker, depending on what team he goes to. So, Ernest should be interesting. I'm definitely interested to see where he gets taken, if taken at all, in this upcoming draft. Now, let's go to the offensive side. Obviously, we're not going to talk too much about Colin Hill. I was surprised to see he even was working out during the pro day. I didn't see many throws during the season. We're not going to talk too much about that. Let's talk about the guy he was throwing to. Now, South Carolina's offense wasn't that amazing last year. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone who's listening. But one of the top player on this offense, well, the running back situation was awesome. But Shi Smith is a beast. And he was on a team where everyone knew if South Carolina was going to be productive in the passing game, he was likely going to get the ball. Very productive, a little undersized in a deep wide receiver class. First off, how do you think Shi fits when one of extremely deep wide receiver class?
I mean, I think projecting wise, he's like a 4th to 6th round pick. But again, this is a guy, I think he could be a deadly slot option in the NFL. I mean, the speed is there. And I think this is a guy that made himself a lot of money in the Senior Bowl and, of course, at the Pro Day as well. But, extremely quick. He has like that Deebo Samuel type impact, in my opinion. Not quite as explosive, not quite as athletic, but I think he's a guy that could certainly make that type of impact. And again, extremely quick. What he did for South Carolina, and really being the only option, and still being able to do what he did, going up against the best defensive backs he was going to face each and every single week. And again, just time and time again in that offense that, like you said, wasn't that explosive. And who do we blame for that? Colin Hill, Mike Bobo, I don't know, whatever. We don't have to get into that, but I think Shi Smith, certainly a guy. I mean, you saw what he did at the beginning of last season, was averaging like 11 catches a game. Yeah. I mean, it was insane. So I think he's got a chance to be like a Wes Welker, like a deadly slot option. Again, like we talked about earlier, though, I think for a guy like Shi Smith, what it's really going to come down to is, do you get into the right system? Do you get into the right scheme? And do you get into the right offense? Do you have a reliable quarterback throwing to you? If he does, I think he can have a lot of success as a rookie. I think he can have a lot of success at the jump. And you've seen South Carolina, put these wide receivers in the NFL, man. Look at Brian Edwards last year. Had a very successful rookie year for the Raiders. So, I like Shi Smith's game a lot. Again, he's a speed demon. He's extremely quick. And again, I think he can be a deadly slot option. I see him being, again, probably like a 5th to 7th round pick. Nothing crazy. Like I said, it's a really deep wide receiver class. Yeah. But I think Shi Smith has undeniable athleticism. And again, I think he's actually going to be one of the surprises in the NFL next year.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see him. I mean, you mentioned Deebo Samuel. I think the last 2 years, the San Francisco 49ers have taken out of the University of South Carolina. Yeah. So, man, I would love to see him in that offense.
Yeah, Samuel and Kinlaw, man. They're doing well. They're doing really well. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I think Shi, he's a great slot option. It was fun to watch him play in Columbia, and he finally got his opportunity this past season because, it was always and Shi Smith. It was never Shi Smith, the feature guy. It was and Shi Smith. You had Deebo, Brian, and Shi. Then you had Brian and Shi. You finally got to see Shi Smith on his own last year. And, my expectations were, I would just say this. I had major question marks in the sense of, okay, how does this guy perform as a true number one? And, I mean, he completely exceeded my expectations and what he was able to do. And, like I said, the craziest part about that offense last year was Shi Smith and Kevin Harris, they were the go-to guys, and everybody knew that, and they still balled out and did their thing. So I think it just speaks to, the type of players that they are.
Yeah. Well, just one more thing on Shi Smith. So leading up to the draft, the Heisman Trophy winner, undersized, underweight, everyone still loves him, Devontae Smith. So people may have been critical about that he's underweight. Now, I understand Shi Smith's going to be a guy that plays in the slot. Most slot receivers are small. But does that 186 concern you?
I mean, I'll tell you this. It doesn't. I mean, he's going to put on more weight when he gets to the league. Let's, come on. He's definitely is. He's going to beef up. But I will say this. Shi Smith showed a lot of toughness last year. I mean, he is a guy that's not afraid to take a lick. He's not afraid to go over the middle. And of course, it's a different game in the NFL, and, it's going to be a step up for sure. But does it concern me necessarily? No. I think Shi Smith will do whatever's necessary, whatever weight he needs to get to. But again, I would not question this guy's toughness. He's actually really physical to be at the size that he's at. So, no, I from what I saw from Shi last year, at least at South Carolina, I don't question his toughness. I don't question his physicality. And I think he'll be able to make the adjustment.
Cool. Well, one last person I want to mention here on the offensive line. I mean, everyone was blowing. Obviously, when you're an offensive lineman at a pro day, combine, whatever the workout situation is, you're expected to put up weight on the bench press.
Right.
But when you get into the 30s, heck, over 35,
yeah.
Again, you can only take these workouts with a grain of salt. But Sadarius Hutcherson put up 36 reps on the bench press.
Yeah.
The guy's strong. The guy's physical. Do you think his strength will transition to the next level?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And again, Sadarius is kind of like a guy I think probably has more overall, like a higher ceiling, but he's a guy I look at like Ernest Jones in the sense was really the heartbeat and a leader on that offense and a leader of that entire football team last year. But yeah, no, Sadarius played great football for South Carolina. And it was fun watching him evolve into the player that he became and was always a solid guy for sure. But I mean, here's the thing. Last year, the way he played, whenever you have a running back go for over 1,000 yards in a 10-game season, you did your job. That offensive line did its job and they moved people around and they moved bodies. So yeah, no, I think Sadarius is going to probably be one of those guys like a Donnell Stanley, like a Zach Bailey, going to have a career in the NFL for a long, long time for sure. And I think he'll probably be one of the next great Gamecocks offensive linemen to do so. So yeah, love Sadarius' game. Again, 36 reps on the bench press, like you said, that is moving some weight around for sure. So he's also athletic too. He's actually a lot more athletic than people give him credit for because the Gamecocks did a lot of pulling, a lot of stuff like that. And, you could see him out there moving bodies around, like I said. So I think Sadarius for sure, he projects well at the next level, I think, and I'd expect him to have a really, really long and successful career in the NFL.
Well, from a prospect standpoint, those are really the names that you could hear mentioned at the NFL draft. I want to talk to my final question on the future of South Carolina football. Obviously, we mentioned new head coaching change. What are some expectations you have for this team next year and the direction of where this program's going?
Yeah, I think for this first season for Shane Beamer, getting to a bowl game would be a huge success. So going 6-6. And of course, we're returning back to a normal schedule, thank God. Hopefully we're getting back to full capacity, fingers crossed. But you get the non-conference schedule back. So when I look at this schedule, Alec, I look at it and break it down like this. Eastern Illinois, East Carolina, and Troy, those should all be wins. They should all be kick-ins with all due respect to all three of those teams. You should beat Vanderbilt. You haven't lost to them in like a zillion years, 12 years to be exact. From there, you start looking at the schedule and breaking it down. Mizzou, Kentucky, Tennessee, you get Auburn at home again. I think there's a realistic path to 6 wins. I think the over-under in Vegas will probably be 5, but I think there's a realistic path to 6 wins. But really, the thing I want to see this year, Alec, and the thing that I think fans, whatever the win total is, you know what I mean? Because this first year, of course, it's Shane Beamer establishing his culture, establishing his expectations of these players. I just want to see a well-coached football team. What I mean by that is, they're disciplined. They don't make stupid mistakes. They don't have stupid penalties. They don't shoot themselves in the foot. They play with the right effort. They play like they're actually proud to represent the name on the front of the jersey and not just the name on the back, because that was a huge problem in the last regime. Let's just call it for what it is. So I want to see a well-coached football team. Once you see a well-coached football team and you start to see the culture take over and see that established, well, now you're well-coached. Now we got to go get some ball players. But that's the first step, I think, seeing a well-coached team, seeing a team that responds to adversity the right way. That's something that, Alec, I talked about with Gamecocks. Baseball this year, with basketball. Heck, I talk about it with all the sports. We can sit here and project in the preseason, talk about this guy's all conference, that guy's all conference, this team looks like this, like that, here's the expectations. But my favorite thing to see about a team, how do they respond when they get punched in the mouth? Because they're going to get punched in the mouth at some point. You got Georgia week 3, I believe. It's going to happen. You play in Florida, you play A&M, you play Clemson. You're going to get punched in the mouth. I just want to see a team respond the right way. And that was another thing that bothered fans as well. You look at last year and really the entire previous regime. I thought there was a lot of times that South going to quit. Bottom line, just call it for what it is. And that's why you saw some of these ugly scores, some of these blowouts. So again, a well-coached football team, and I think responding to adversity is part of it. A team that buys into the culture, buys into the system. Again, it's year 1 of Shane Beamer, though. I think, of course, fans don't set any unrealistic expectations. I think people talking about winning 8 or 9 games, I think, is a little crazy. I'm not saying there's not talent on this team, but you got to be realistic. And again, you're breaking in a new coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. Everything is new this year. But I think getting to 6-6, I think getting to a bowl game would be a very successful season in Shane Beamer's first season. And I think it's very doable, and I think it's very realistic expectation. So again, should be a lot of fun. Just want to see a well-coached team, but getting to that 6-6 mark, I think, is certainly realistic in Shane Beamer's first season.
Awesome. Well, hopefully the Gamecocks don't blow one of those early non-conference games.
Yeah, and I said that, I give all due respect, by the way, to East Carolina because that trip to Greenville is one that I think that's a huge game, obviously. I mean, you need to start the season off the right way, and the Gamecocks have, it's wild when you look at their schedule. We broke it down a couple of months ago. When you look at their schedule, though, it sets up very favorably in the first half of the season. I mean, you could realistically start 5-2, which – I mean, you imagine a 5-2 start in Shane Beamer's first year. I mean, obviously Columbia would be buzzing. I mean, the Gamecocks would probably be the talk of the SEC. And then, of course, in the second half, you play the Floridas, the A&Ms, the Auburns, the Clemsons, and it gets much, much tougher. But I don't know. I think all of us are kind of wait and see. Of course, we're sitting right now in the honeymoon phase of the program, and everything's great. Everybody's 0-0, nobody's lost, nothing bad's happened yet. But again, for me, in sports, no matter what it is, it's all about how do you respond to adversity. And that's, you could probably talk to Nick Saban about it. I mean, the best teams in the country, one of the reasons they are where they are is because they respond to adversity the right way. You're just going to run into it in sports. It's not perfect. Things are going to go against you. Heck, we were talking baseball before, and I've said that a million times about this South Carolina baseball team. It's like baseball's a game of failure. You're going to hit adversity every single time you take the field. It's all about responding the right way. So, again, I'm excited to see what Shane Beamer can do. Again, the vibes are great right now. The morale is great. The culture is being instilled. It's being established. We've got the spring game coming up on April 24th. But I know Gamecock fans are very, very eager on the edge of their seat and just thankful to get a breath of fresh air going into this fall season. I know it's one that's as anticipated as any in a really, really long time. But, I would just say to Gamecock fans, be patient. It's going to be a process. I know people don't like to hear that. People don't like to be patient. But I do think there's enough talent on this team to get to that 6-6 mark, which, again, I think would be a huge success, especially if you can win a bowl game, man. If you could go 7-6 in that first year, I think that would be a great sign for the future of the program.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing Doty in this new offense. Obviously, Beamer came from Oklahoma, who's year after year had one of the best offenses. Watching Doty in high school, when I got to commentate the Wilson High School games and we got the chance to call them for against Myrtle Beach, I said on my show, if you were to tell me he was going to South Carolina to play QB, I would have believed you. So I think he's going to fit in this offense very well, and obviously the skill around it will improve over the years. But, man, I cannot wait for September. Watching this team play next year.
I was just going to say, no, I agree with you because it's so interesting. When I go into a season, of course, we talk top storylines and, man, everything's a storyline. Because, at this point, all positions are open. You're coming off of winning 6 games the last 2 years combined. And sure, you got some good players. I think running back might be the only position that's like we know what to expect with Kevin Harris and Marshawn Lloyd returning. But, dude, everything's a top storyline. It's just wide open across the board, which is very, very nerve-wracking, but is very fun and exciting at the same time. I think the big question for this team this year is going to be defensively. You have 10 scholarship defensive backs on the roster right now. You lost so much from a defensive backfield that already wasn't great, that already was inconsistent. Then you lose Jaycee Horn, Israel Mukuamu, and then to the transfer portal, you lose Jamie Robinson, you lose John Dixon. I think it's going to be a bit of a crapshoot on the defense, but I think offensively, like you said, Luke Doty, it should be fun to watch. Of course, Jason Brown, what can he do in that quarterback competition as well? And that's the question right now that, of course, Alec, everybody has and asked me, who's going to be the starting quarterback? Gun to head, I'd say Luke Doty. He's the only guy that's played an SEC game. And when I talk about Jason Brown, I say this respectfully, but St. Francis ain't the SEC. Let's see what the guy can do against real elite competition. I'd say the same thing for E.J. Jenkins as well, the 6'7" wide receiver transfer. So, but again, it's all wait and see. It's all guesswork. We have no idea, but I am really excited to see how this thing unfolds. Again, I do think, there's talent on this football team. There's no question. You look at the guys' star ratings and recruiting rankings from the past couple of years. Recruiting wasn't the problem for Muschamp. It was everything else. So there is talent on this roster, and it'll be this staff's job to get the most out of it. We'll see if they can do that this fall.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show today to break down the prospects and the future of South Carolina football.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Let's definitely do it again soon for sure.
Absolutely, man. Well, that's going to be it for this episode of the Alec Walt Show. I'm Alec Walt alongside Chris Phillips talking South Carolina football. Now, obviously, you're going to want to follow him on the Spurs Up Show for those of you Gamecock fans, even non-Gamecock fans. This is the premier Gamecock social media page. Chris does a fantastic job covering all South Carolina sports. You're going to want to give them a follow. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Down the Block Sports for more of my exclusive content. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and go Gamecocks.
Go Cox. Appreciate it.